The moment my father told me I wasn't invited to my own family's store anniversary, I realized they had already erased me.
If you've ever been quietly pushed out of your own family while being told it was for the best, hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe. You're going to understand exactly what comes next. My name is Elena Moore, and I was 32 years old when I finally stopped asking why I was never enough for them. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning, just after I unlocked the front door of my shop. The bell above the door chimed softly, the familiar sound echoing through the small leather studio I had built with my own hands. The smell of hide, beeswax, and machine oil hung in the air, comforting and steady. I had named the shop Elm and Hide, a narrow storefront in Portland, Oregon, where I designed and repaired handmade leather goods. Wallets, belts, satchels, journal covers. Nothing flashy. Honest work. I was stitching a torn briefcase handle when my phone buzzed. The caller ID read Robert Moore, my father. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered. "Hi, Dad." His voice was clipped, businesslike. It always was with me. "Elena, your mother and I wanted to let you know that the family decided to keep the anniversary dinner small this year." I paused, needle hovering mid-stitch. "What anniversary dinner?" "Our store," he said, as if I should already know. 40 years of more fine leather. "We're hosting a private event this Saturday. Clients, suppliers, community leaders." I waited. Silence stretched. "And?" I finally asked. "And we don't think it would be appropriate for you to attend," he said. "It might confuse people." Confuse them. That word landed harder than he realized. My mother, Carolyn Moore, must have been listening on speaker because I heard her sigh softly in the background. The sigh she always used when she wanted to sound reasonable. "Elena," she added, "your brother Daniel Moore has worked very hard to modernize the business. This is his moment." I looked around my shop, the shelves lined with finished goods, the custom orders stacked neatly by name, the waiting list pinned to the corkboard behind the counter. Last year alone, I had repaired over 1,300 items, many of them sent by customers who said the Moore family store had turned them away. "I work with leather, too," I said quietly. "Yes," Robert replied, "but not at our level." That was the moment. The one where something inside me went still. I had grown up in that family store. I learned to cut hides before I learned long division. I burned my fingers on edge paint at age 9. But when Daniel decided he wanted the business, I became invisible. The girl who helped. The one who was creative but not serious, not leadership material. Daniel was 36 now, golden boy, MBA from a private school my parents paid for. He redesigned the logo, raised prices, outsourced half the production, and called it innovation. I swallowed. "So I'm not welcome." "It's not personal," Carolyn said. "It's about optics." Optics, another clean word for exclusion. "Okay," I said. "Thanks for telling me." I hung up before they could soften it with excuses. I stood there for a long time, listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights, the quiet hum of my own breath. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I picked up the needle and finished the stitch. But something shifted. This wasn't new. It was just clearer. Growing up, Daniel got the praise. I got the chores. When he broke a cutting table, it was an accident. When I miscut a strap, it was proof I wasn't careful enough. When he talked business at dinner, my father leaned in. When I talked design, my mother changed the subject. They never said they didn't believe in me. They just never acted like they did. At 24, when I asked to formally join the family business, Robert told me, "We don't mix family and management." 2 years later, Daniel was named co-owner. That was when I rented this place. 900 square feet, cracked tile floor, one industrial sewing machine I bought secondhand for $1,800. I worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. I fixed what others threw away, and people noticed. By the time I was 30, Elm and Hyde brought in $214,000 a year. Not empire money, but real, clean, mine. Still, to my family, I was the hobbyist, the embarrassment, the offshoot. That Tuesday afternoon, after the call, a man walked in carrying an old leather duffel bag. His name was Marcus Allen, a local architect. I remembered him. My brother had refused his repair last year. "Think you can save this?" Marcus asked. I ran my hands over the cracked leather, the worn seams. Yes, I said. Give me 3 days. He smiled with relief. Thank you. Morse told me it wasn't worth fixing. I didn't respond. I just wrote up the ticket. After he left, I locked the door and sat on the workbench. My phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel. He didn't call. He never did. Hope you understand about Saturday. This is important for the brand.
The brand, not the family.
I typed back.
Nothing. What Daniel didn't know, what none of them knew, was that one of the anniversary guests was already my client. Hannah Brooks, a regional buyer for a luxury goods distributor. She had brought me a damaged prototype 6 months ago. We talked leather, margins, supply chains. She asked real questions. Last week, she emailed me. Are you free to talk expansion? I hadn't replied yet. Saturday was supposed to be a celebration of legacy. Instead, it became a deadline. I stood up, unlocked the door, and flipped the sign to open. The bell rang again. A woman stepped in, holding a worn leather purse, eyes hopeful. I smiled at her. Hi, how can I help you? As I reached for my tools, I realized something important. They thought excluding me would keep me small. They had no idea it was the first quiet mistake. And by the end of this week, they were going to understand exactly who they had pushed aside. The first time I understood that my family didn't see me as competition, it wasn't said out loud. It showed in how relaxed they were about leaving me behind. The days leading up to Saturday moved fast. Orders came in, repairs stacked up. I worked with my head down, hands steady, letting repetition do what thinking couldn't. Cut, skive, stitch, burnish. The rhythm had always kept me grounded. This week, it kept me quiet. On Wednesday afternoon, my mother, Carolyn Moore, walked into Elman Hyde without calling first. I heard the bell, looked up, and immediately knew why she came. She wore the same beige trench coat she saved for occasions where she wanted to look neutral and disappointed at the same time. Elena, she said, scanning the shop like it was a temporary inconvenience. You're busy. I usually am, I replied. She stepped closer, fingers brushing a display wallet without asking. We wanted to make sure you weren't upset about Saturday. I didn't answer right away. I finished trimming a strap, set the blade down, and met her eyes. I'm clear about where I stand, I said. Carolyn sighed again, the practiced one. It's just one evening. You've always been sensitive. There it was. The word that followed me since childhood. Sensitive. When Daniel slammed a door, it was passion. When I raised my voice, it was emotion. When I withdrew, it was sulking. There was no version of my reaction that was acceptable. You know, she continued, lowering her voice. People will be talking. This event is about stability. Investors, donors. I didn't realize leather belts needed donors, I said calmly. Her lips tightened. This attitude is exactly why we didn't think it was wise for you to come. I nodded slowly. Is that all? She hesitated. Then she said it. Daniel mentioned you've been taking clients we couldn't accommodate. Some people might misunderstand that. I felt something cold slide into place. So this is about business, I said. It's about not confusing the market, she corrected. The market. The word my family used when they wanted distance without guilt. I don't advertise as more leather, I said. I never have. But people talk, she replied. And frankly, Elena, it wouldn't look good if it seemed like you were benefiting from our anniversary. I looked at her. Really looked. My mother. The woman who never came to my shop opening, who forgot my 29th birthday because Daniel had a conference that week, who once told me, you don't need recognition to be happy. I didn't ask for anything, I said. I know, she said quickly, and we appreciate that. Appreciate. Another empty word. She left soon after, leaving the shop colder than before. That night, I opened the email from Hannah Brooks. Subject line, expansion question. Elena, she wrote. I'll be in town this weekend for a private event and more fine leather. If you're free, I'd love to see your operation again. Your repair work impressed my team. I read it twice. They invited her. They didn't invite me. I replied within a minute. Saturday morning works. Shop opens at 9. Her response came fast. Perfect. I slept poorly that night. Not from fear. From clarity. Thursday brought another small fracture. Daniel stopped by the shop unannounced. He never came in unless he wanted something. "Elena," he said, standing just inside the door, hands in his coat pockets. "You've been busy." "I usually am," I repeated. He smiled thinly. "Look, I don't want this to be weird. Saturday's important. Media, community leaders, you get it." "I do," I said. He relaxed. That was the mistake. "Good, because there's something else." I waited. "There's been talk," Daniel said, "about brand confusion. Some customers think Elm and Hyde is connected to us." I raised an eyebrow. And we think it would be best if you clarified that publicly. Maybe a post. Something that makes it clear you're independent." Independent. He said it like it was a favor. "You want me to distance myself," I said. "For your own good," he replied. "We don't want people assuming your shop reflects our standards." That sentence landed exactly how he intended. I nodded once. "I'll think about it." Daniel smiled again, satisfied. "Great. See you around." After he left, I locked the door and sat on the floor between work tables. Not dramatic, just still. This wasn't about confusion. It was about control. They didn't want me at the table, but they didn't want me visible either. Not growing, not overlapping, not existing in a way that challenged the story they told about themselves. By Friday, word traveled faster than they expected. 2 customers mentioned the anniversary event casually. One asked if I was attending. I said no. I didn't explain. That afternoon, Marcus Allen returned for his duffel bag. He ran his hands over the restored leather, impressed. "This is better than new," he said. "Leather remembers," I replied. "You just have to listen to it." He hesitated, then said, "You know, Moore's mentioned they're looking for exclusive partnerships after Saturday." I looked up. "Did they?" He nodded. "But honestly," he added, "I prefer working with people who fix what they break." He paid in cash, left a tip. Saturday arrived colder than expected. At 9 sharp, Hannah Brooks walked into Elm and Hyde. She wore a tailored coat, sharp eyes, no entourage. "This is it," she said, looking around. "Smaller than I imagined." "It's enough," I said. She watched me work for an hour, asked about margins, capacity, supplier relationships, what I could handle alone, what I'd refuse to outsource. "I don't scale by cutting corners," I said. "I scale by training hands." She smiled. "That's rare." At 10:45, she asked, "Why aren't you at your family's event?" I didn't dodge it. "They didn't invite me," I said. She didn't look surprised. "That tells me more than anything else," she replied. As she left, she handed me a card. "Call me Monday," she said. "I think there's room for you, where you won't be managed." That evening, my family gathered under warm lights and speeches about legacy. I stayed in my shop, finishing an order, listening to the quiet. And somewhere between the last stitch and the last light turned off, I understood something clearly. They thought Saturday was the peak. They didn't realize it was the edge. And what comes after the edge isn't falling. It's leaving. Saturday night passed without me, but it didn't pass quietly. I closed the shop at 7, later than usual, mostly because I didn't feel like going home. The street outside was busy with people heading toward restaurants, jackets pulled tight against the cold. Somewhere across town, my family was clinking glasses and congratulating themselves for surviving another decade together. I wiped down the workbench, turned off the machines, and stood there longer than necessary. When I locked the door, the sound felt final. Not dramatic, just decisive. At home, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel Moore. "Event went great. A lot of interest. You would have liked it." I stared at the screen, then set the phone face down on the table. I slept deeply that night. No dreams, no rehearsed conversations, just darkness. Sunday morning brought the first crack. I was halfway through repairing a saddlebag when an email came in from a name I recognized immediately. Thomas Keller, owner of Keller Outfitters. He had been a Moore fine leather client for years. High-volume orders, corporate gifts. I'd seen his name stamped on invoices when I was younger. Subject line: "Quick question. Elena," he wrote. "Congratulations on your work. I heard about your shop from Marcus Allen. Can we talk this week?" I read it twice. Then again. By noon, 3 more emails arrived. Different names, same thread. People Daniel had toasted with the night before. People who had seen the product, heard the speeches, and then quietly asked someone else, where real craftsmanship still lived. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I drove past the family store. More fine leather sat on the corner of 5th and Alder. Brick facade polished clean for the anniversary. New signage, fresh windows. A banner still hung from the awning. 40 years of heritage. I parked across the street and watched people walk in and out. Some carrying branded bags, some empty-handed. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. On Monday morning, I called Hannah Brooks. She answered on the second ring. I was hoping you'd call. I want to understand what you're proposing, I said. Lunch? She asked. My treat. We met at a quiet cafe near the river. No one there recognized either of us. That mattered. Hannah got straight to the point. I don't invest in companies, she said. I invest in systems. Your shop is a system. Small, but disciplined. I listened. We're launching a pilot program, she continued. Limited runs, high-end repairs, and bespoke goods. I need someone who understands material, not just branding. And more fine leather? I asked. She didn't hesitate. They're positioning for scale. You're positioning for longevity. Those paths don't overlap. There it was, said out loud. I can't overpromise, I said. I won't compromise quality. She nodded. That's why I'm here. We talked numbers, not fantasy ones, real capacity. Real limits. If I took the contract, Elm and Hyde would triple output in 12 months. Slowly. Carefully. I'd need help. Training. Space. I left the cafe with a folder and a decision to make. That afternoon, Carolyn Moore called again. I let it ring twice before answering. Elena, she said, breathless. We need to talk. I waited. There's been confusion, she said. Some of our clients mentioned your name this morning. I didn't respond. Daniel's concerned, she added. He thinks you may have misrepresented your relationship to the store. I've never claimed affiliation, I said. But people assume, she insisted. You know how gossip works. Yes, I said. I do. Her voice sharpened. This is exactly what we were trying to avoid. Avoid what? Competition. I think it would be best, she continued, if you stopped taking repairs from our former clients. Former. The word slipped out too easily. No, I said. A pause. No? She repeated, like she'd misheard. No, I said again. I won't do that. Elena, she warned. This could hurt the family. I pictured the anniversary dinner, the speeches, Daniel's smile. This isn't a family request, I replied. It's a business one. She hung up without saying goodbye. Tuesday brought escalation. A letter arrived at the shop. Official. Cream paper. Embossed header. More fine leather. Inside was a cease and desist notice. They claimed brand confusion. Alleged unfair competition. Requested I refrain from marketing that referenced heritage techniques or traditional craftsmanship. I read it once. Then again. They weren't suing. Not yet. They were warning. I forwarded the letter to Rachel Kim, an attorney I'd consulted years earlier when registering the business. She called me within an hour. This is thin, Rachel said. They're posturing. Should I be worried? I asked. You should be prepared, she replied. And careful. Careful. A word I was very familiar with. That night, Daniel showed up at the shop just before closing. He didn't knock. Elena, he said, stepping inside, eyes scanning the space like he owned it. We need to get ahead of this. I'm busy, I replied, continuing to stitch. You're crossing a line, he said. I looked up slowly. You drew the line, I said. You just didn't think I'd reach it. His jaw tightened. This is bigger than you, Daniel said. You don't understand how fragile reputation is. I set my tools down. I understand it very well, I said. I've been repairing yours for years. He scoffed. You think you're equal now? No, I said. I think I'm independent. That word again. Only this time, it wasn't a gift. It was a threat. He leaned closer. Walk away, he said quietly, before this gets ugly. I met his gaze. You already made it ugly, I said. I'm just not pretending anymore. He left without another word. I locked the door and stood alone in the shop. The letter from my family folded neatly in my pocket. The next morning, I signed the pilot agreement with Hannah Brooks, not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to shrink. And as I sent the confirmation email, I knew something else, too. My family thought this was about visibility. They didn't realize it was about control, and they were about to lose it. The cease and desist letter changed how people spoke to me. Not colder, not hostile, carefully. Suppliers paused before answering emails. 2 longtime customers asked, gently, if I was okay. Even the landlord, Victor Ramirez, stopped by Elm & Hyde under the excuse of checking a plumbing issue he'd ignored for months. "Everything good?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe, eyes curious. "Everything's fine," I said. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. That was how pressure worked in my family. They didn't confront you directly. They created a fog and waited for you to panic. I didn't. I worked. By Wednesday, the pilot agreement with Hannah Brooks went live. Nothing public, no announcements. Just purchase orders sent quietly to my inbox, with timelines and specifications that made my hands itch, in a good way. The first order was modest. 40 custom leather folios, hand-stitched, vegetable tanned, delivery in 6 weeks. I broke the work down into hours, materials, margins. Then I called Luis Ortega, a retired leatherworker I'd met at a trade show 2 years ago. "Still interested in part-time work?" I asked. He laughed. "Only if you don't rush me." "I won't," I said. "I can't." That was the difference. By Friday, Daniel made his move. He didn't come to me. He went to the city. A notice arrived, taped to my door that morning. Elm & Hyde was scheduled for a compliance inspection the following week. Zoning, noise, safety. Routine, according to the city seal. I stood there reading it while a customer waited behind me, purse in hand. "You good?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Give me 10 minutes. I closed the shop and called Rachel Kim again. "They're leaning on process," she said. "That means they're nervous." "What do I do?" "You comply," she replied. "Perfectly," so I did. I cleaned, documented, labeled. I printed permits and maintenance logs. I scheduled machine servicing early. I asked questions in writing and kept copies of every response. When the inspector arrived, a man named George Whitman, he walked through slowly, clipboard in hand. "Quiet place," he said. "That's intentional," I replied. He checked outlets, ventilation, fire extinguisher dates. "You do everything yourself?" he asked. "For now." He nodded. "Most complaints we get come from places that cut corners." "I don't," I said. He smiled faintly. The inspection passed without issue. That afternoon, I received an email from Daniel. Subject: "This is getting out of hand. Elena," he wrote, "you're forcing us into a position we didn't want. The board is concerned." Board. The word made me pause. More Fine Leather had never had a board. It was family-owned, controlled, insular. I replied with one line: "I am operating legally." His response came fast. "This doesn't have to be public." That was the tell. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of attention. Saturday brought another invitation I hadn't expected. A handwritten card arrived in the mail. From Margaret Hale, president of the Portland Artisan Guild. "I've been following your work," she wrote. "We're hosting our annual showcase next month. I'd like you to apply." I stared at the card for a long time. The Artisan Guild Showcase wasn't just a fair. It was curated, selective, media covered, and More Fine Leather had sponsored it for years. I looked at the date. The showcase fell on the same weekend Daniel was scheduled to announce his next chapter for the family business. I applied that night. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had been an unspoken expectation my entire life, even after I moved out. Even after I opened my shop. That Sunday, my mother texted, "Dinner at 6. We should talk." I didn't respond. At 6:30, my phone rang. "Elena," Carolyn said, trying to sound patient. "Are you coming?" "No," I replied. A pause. "Daniel is here," she said. "He wants to clear the air." I pictured their dining room. The long table, Daniel at the head. My place set out of habit, not invitation. "I'm busy," I said. "With what?" she asked. "With my life," I replied. I hung up before she could say my name again. Monday morning, the Guild emailed me back. "Your application has been accepted," Margaret Hale wrote. "We'd like you to anchor the leather category." Anchor. I leaned back in my chair and let that word sit. At noon, Hannah Brooks called. "We've had strong feedback," she said. "I want to expand the pilot." I closed my eyes. "How much?" I asked. "Double," she replied. "But only if you're comfortable." I thought about the inspection. The letter. The pressure. I am, I said. That afternoon, Daniel showed up again. This time, he didn't come alone. My father, Robert Moore, stood beside him. They didn't step inside. Elena, my father said, voice tight, we need to speak as a family. I stayed behind the counter. You should have done that years ago, I replied. Daniel glanced around, jaw set. You're embarrassing us. No, I said. I'm visible. Robert frowned. You're threatening something we built. You built it without me, I said. I built this without you. Daniel took a step forward. If you go through with the guild showcase— What? I asked. He stopped himself. Robert exhaled. It would be a mistake. I looked at them. Really looked. Two men who had never asked what I wanted, who only showed up when control slipped. I've already applied, I said. Daniel's face went still. And if I'm accepted? I continued. What will you do? Neither of them answered. They left without another word. That night, alone in the shop, I packed orders and labeled boxes. My hands moved on muscle memory, but my mind was sharp. They weren't going to stop. They were going to escalate. And for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. The guild showcase wasn't just exposure. It was a line. And once crossed, there would be no pretending this was a misunderstanding anymore. The acceptance email from the Portland Artisan Guild didn't feel like victory. It felt like ignition. By Tuesday morning, the news had already traveled faster than I expected. The Guild posted a preliminary exhibitor list on their website. No press release, no spotlight, just names. Mine sat there between two designers I respected. Elena Moore, Elm and Hyde. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Not because I was proud, because I knew exactly who else was staring at it. My phone rang an hour later. This time, it wasn't my family. It was Victor Ramirez, my landlord. Elena, he said, voice careful. We need to talk about your lease. I leaned against the work table. Is there a problem? No problem, he said quickly. Just a conversation. We met that afternoon in his office upstairs. He didn't offer coffee. That was new. I got a call, Victor said, folding his hands. From someone claiming to represent more fine leather. I didn't interrupt. They expressed concern, he continued, about increased traffic, noise, zoning issues if your shop grows. And? I asked. And they implied, Victor said, choosing his words, that it might be simpler for everyone if I reconsidered renewing your lease next year. There it was. Not an order. A suggestion. How long have you owned this building? I asked. 10 years. And in that time, I continued, have I ever missed rent? No. Had complaints? No. Violations? No. He sighed. Elena, I don't want trouble. I don't either, I said. But I won't disappear to make someone else comfortable. Victor looked at me for a long moment. I'll need time. You have it, I said. In writing. He nodded reluctantly. When I left, my hands were steady. This wasn't about space. It was about message. That evening, Luis Ortega came by to review materials for the folio order. He ran his fingers over the leather, nodding. You're going to need help, he said. Real help. I know, I replied. He looked up. Your family? No, I said. Professionals. He smiled. Good answer. Wednesday brought the next move. A mutual supplier, Westline Tannery, emailed to inform me of a temporary hold on bulk orders pending internal review. No timeline. No explanation. I forwarded the email to Hannah Brooks. She called immediately. This isn't coincidence, she said. No, I replied. It's pressure. Do you want us to step in? She asked. I thought about it. No, I said. Not yet. Silence on the line. You're sure? Hannah asked. Yes, I said. If I lean on you now, they'll say I can't stand alone. She understood immediately. Keep me posted, she said, and document everything. I was already doing that. By Thursday, Daniel made his most obvious mistake. He sent an email, not to me, to Hannah Brooks. I saw it because Hannah forwarded it, without comment. The subject line read, Clarification regarding Elm and Hyde. Daniel introduced himself as co-owner of More Fine Leather. He expressed concern about brand overlap and suggested a conversation to avoid reputational misunderstandings. He CC'd my father. He did not CC me. I read it twice. Then I replied from my own account. Daniel Elm and Hyde is an independent business. I am not affiliated with More Fine Leather in any capacity. Any concerns regarding my operations should be directed to me directly. Elena Moore. That was it. No accusation. No threat. Just a record. His response came fast. Elena. This didn't need to involve outside parties. I didn't reply. Friday afternoon, I received a call from Margaret Hale of the Artisan Guild. I wanted to give you a heads up, she said. We've received inquiries about your participation. From who? I asked. From a sponsor, she replied. More Fine Leather. I closed my eyes. They asked if your inclusion was provisional, Margaret continued. It's not. Your spot is confirmed. Thank you, I said. I should tell you, she added. They also implied you might not be ready for the exposure. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I appreciate the concern, I said. I'm ready. There was a pause. Good, Margaret said, because we don't remove artists for family discomfort. That night, my mother showed up at my apartment. Not the shop, the apartment. She knocked softly, like she was afraid I wouldn't open the door. Elena, she said when I did. We need to talk. I stepped aside but didn't invite her in. She stood there, coat still on, eyes tired. You're tearing the family apart, she said quietly. No, I replied. I stopped holding it together alone. She flinched. Daniel is under a lot of pressure, she said. Your father, too. I've been under pressure my entire life, I said. It just never mattered. She shook her head. Why are you doing this? I looked at her. I'm not doing anything to you, I said. I'm doing something for myself. She studied my face like she was seeing it for the first time. You could still step back, she said. Let this cool down. And then what? I asked. Wait quietly until I'm allowed to exist again? Her silence was answer enough. I won't come between you and your brother, she said finally. You already did, I replied. Years ago. She left without another word. Saturday morning, the Guild sent out a media preview. My shop was listed as a featured studio. Not headline, not spotlight, featured. Enough. That afternoon, Victor Ramirez emailed. Subject: Lease renewal clarification. Elena, he wrote. After review, I see no reason not to renew your lease under existing terms. Please consider this confirmation. I exhaled slowly. The pressure hadn't stopped. It had just met resistance. Sunday evening, I received a final message from Daniel. This is your last chance to de-escalate. I didn't reply, because by then, I understood something clearly. They weren't afraid of losing business. They were afraid of losing the story. And next week, at the Artisan Guild Showcase, the story wouldn't belong to them anymore. It would belong to the work. And work, unlike legacy, doesn't lie. The week before the Artisan Guild Showcase felt like standing inside a held breath. Nothing exploded, nothing resolved. The pressure didn't disappear. It simply changed shape, like water finding new cracks. On Monday morning, Westline Tannery finally called. The representative, Evan Price, sounded uncomfortable. Elena, I wanted to explain the delay, he said. We received a suggestion to pause larger orders until after the Guild event. A suggestion from who? I asked. He hesitated. A long-standing client. I see, I said. Off the record, Evan added quickly. Your account is clean, reliable. We don't usually do this. I understand, I replied. When can you release the hold? Another pause. Friday. I thanked him and hung up. They weren't trying to shut me down. They were trying to time me out. That afternoon, Luis Ortega arrived early. He set his bag down, rolled up his sleeves, and glanced around the shop. You look calm, he said. I'm focused, I replied. He nodded. Same thing, different cost. We worked side by side, the sound of stitching filling the room. Around noon, he spoke again. You know, he said, not looking up. When people start pulling strings like this, it's because they don't believe you'll hold. I know, I said. They've always been wrong about that. Tuesday brought another test. A city notice arrived by mail. Not an inspection this time. A request for documentation regarding waste disposal and chemical handling. Routine. Legitimate. Timed perfectly. I called George Whitman, the inspector from before. You didn't hear this from me, he said. But someone's been asking questions. About what? I asked. About how small shops scale, he replied, and whether they cut corners when they do. I smiled faintly. I don't. I know, he said. Just make sure your paperwork shows it. It did. That night, I stayed late, labeling containers, scanning receipts, backing everything up digitally. When I finally locked up, the street was empty. Quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Carolyn Moore. Your father wants to know if you're coming to Thanksgiving this year. I stared at the message. Thanksgiving was 6 weeks away. They were already reaching for the next lever. I typed one word. No. Then I muted the thread. Wednesday morning, Margaret Hale from the Guild stopped by unannounced. She walked in slowly, eyes taking in the space, the tools, the shelves. So this is Elman Hyde, she said. Yes, I replied. She ran her fingers lightly over a finished folio. You work clean. I work honest, I said. She smiled. There's been noise. I assumed there would be, I replied. Margaret leaned against the counter. Some sponsors are uncomfortable. Because I exist, I said. Because you don't fit their narrative, she corrected. She studied me for a moment. We don't remove artists for that. I know, I said. That's why I applied. She nodded. The showcase floor plan is final. Your booth is central. Central. That wasn't accidental. Thursday afternoon, Daniel called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Elena, you're about to embarrass yourself. These people don't care about you. They care about optics. And when this blows back on you, don't expect us to clean it up. I deleted it without listening again. That evening, Hannah Brooks called. I heard about the delays, she said. They're temporary, I replied. I know, she said. But I want you to understand something. I waited. If this showcase goes the way I think it will, Hannah continued, you're going to get attention you can't control. I'm aware, I said. Your family will escalate, she added, not quietly. I'm aware of that too, I replied. She paused. Are you ready? I looked around my shop. The work tables, the orders, the life I built without permission. Yes, I said. Friday arrived with a strange calm. Westline released the materials. Victor confirmed the lease renewal in writing. The city emailed to confirm compliance. Everything I could control was locked down. That night, I loaded finished pieces into crates, labeled them carefully, and stacked them by the door. The showcase setup was Sunday morning. As I turned off the lights, my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message came through seconds later. Elena, a man's voice said, smooth and practiced. This is Gregory Shaw, counsel for More Fine Leather. I believe it would be in everyone's interest to have a conversation before the weekend. There it was, the formal move. I didn't call back. Saturday morning, I met Rachel Kim for coffee. Just in case, I said, sliding my phone across the table with the voicemail cued. She listened once, then she smiled thinly. They're nervous. Should I respond? I asked. Not yet, she replied. Let them show their hand. By Saturday evening, social media started buzzing. Photos from More Fine Leather's anniversary circulated again, repackaged as heritage content. Daniel posted about legacy, about family, about protecting tradition. He did not mention me. I didn't post anything. Sunday morning, I arrived at the Guildhall before sunrise. The space was cavernous, echoing. Booths half-built, artists unloading crates. My booth sat exactly where Margaret said it would be. Central aisle, natural light. As I began setting up, I felt it. The shift. People slowed down when they passed my table, picked things up, asked questions. By mid-morning, Rachel Collins, a local arts reporter, stopped by. Mind if I ask you something? She said. Go ahead, I replied. How does it feel, she asked, to be showcasing independently from such a well-known family brand? I met her eyes. I didn't leave, I said calmly. I was excluded. Her pen paused. That sentence would travel. I knew it the moment I said it. Across the hall, I saw Daniel. He hadn't expected to see me. He stood frozen for half a second, then turned and walked quickly toward a group of sponsors. I continued setting up. The doors opened at noon, and within minutes, the hall filled. People stopped, looked, asked. Orders were discussed, cards exchanged, and somewhere between the third handshake and the fifth serious inquiry, I understood something important. They could no longer pretend I was invisible, but they could still try to reframe me. At 2:30, a man in a tailored suit approached my booth. Ms. Moore, he said. I'm Gregory Shaw. I didn't smile. We need to talk, he added quietly. I looked past him at the crowd gathering, the work catching light. the story unfolding without permission.
Yes, I said. We do.
And that was when I knew the next move wouldn't be subtle. And once made, there would be no way back for any of us. Gregory Shaw didn't wait for an invitation. He stood too close to the table, close enough that I could smell his cologne, close enough to make the interaction feel private, even though it wasn't. "Not here," he said quietly. "It would be better if we stepped aside." I glanced around the hall. The crowd was thickening. Buyers, press, sponsors. Conversations layered over one another like fabric. "Say what you need to say," I replied. "You came to my booth." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "More Fine Leather is prepared to resolve this situation amicably," Gregory said, "before misunderstandings become permanent." "Which misunderstandings?" I asked. He folded his hands. "The perception that you are pushed out, that you are competing unfairly, that family dynamics are bleeding into public space." I held his gaze. "Those aren't perceptions. They're facts." A couple standing nearby pretended to browse, listening. Gregory lowered his voice further. "My clients are willing to offer a settlement." I waited. "A financial package," he continued, "in exchange for a non-disparagement agreement. You would also agree to withdraw from guild-sponsored events for the remainder of the year." There it was. Silence. Purchased. "And my business?" I asked. "You would continue operating," he said smoothly. "Privately, out of sight?" I replied. He didn't deny it. I leaned back slightly. "No." Gregory blinked. "You haven't heard the numbers." "I don't need to," I said. "You're not offering resolution. You're offering erasure." Behind him, I saw Daniel across the hall, pretending not to watch. Gregory straightened. "You should think carefully. My clients are concerned about reputational harm." "I'm not harming your reputation," I replied. "I'm correcting the record." He studied my face. "Then you leave us no choice." "You have choices," I said. "You just don't like them." He stepped back, composure restored. "Expect formal correspondence." "I do," I said. He walked away without another word. Within minutes, the energy shifted. People started asking sharper questions about my training, my history, why I'd started Elman Hyde in the first place. I answered honestly, without drama. "I grew up around leather," I said to one buyer. "But I built this on my own." "Why?" another asked. "Because I wasn't invited to stay," I replied. By mid-afternoon, Rachel Collins returned with a photographer. "We'd like to feature you," she said. "Independent makers with legacy backgrounds." "Fine," I replied, "but keep it factual." "That's the plan," she said. The photo was taken while I worked. No posing, no smiling on command. Just hands, leather, focus. Daniel didn't approach me again that day. My father did. Robert Moore stood at the edge of my booth, posture stiff, eyes scanning the crowd like he was afraid someone might recognize him. "Elena," he said. I didn't look up right away. I finished the stitch, tied it off, set the piece down. "Yes?" I asked. "You're causing unnecessary conflict," he said. "Am I?" I replied. "This event," he continued, gesturing vaguely, "this attention, it reflects poorly." "On who?" I asked. He hesitated. "On the family." I finally looked at him. "You mean on Daniel?" I said. His mouth tightened. "You're being difficult." "I'm being visible," I replied. He lowered his voice. "You could still stop this." "Stop what?" I asked. "Existing?" He didn't answer. Behind him, I saw Gregory Shaw speaking to Margaret Hale. Margaret's expression was polite, unmoved. Robert followed my gaze and frowned. "You don't understand how this works," he said. "They'll side with us." "They already chose," I replied. "They chose the work." He shook his head, disappointment etched deep. "I didn't raise you to do this." I met his eyes steadily. "You didn't raise me to disappear either." That stopped him. He left without another word. The article went live that evening. Not sensational, not cruel, just clear. A profile of an independent leather artisan. A mention of her upbringing. A line about being excluded from a family business anniversary. A quote about building something that didn't require permission. The comments poured in. Some supportive, some curious, some uncomfortable. More Fine Leather issued a statement the next morning. Any suggestion of internal conflict is exaggerated. We wish Elena Moore success in her independent endeavors. Independent. They finally used the word, but it was too late. Because independence doesn't mean separation. It means autonomy. By Tuesday, I received 3 new wholesale inquiries, one from out of state. By Wednesday, Westline Tannery apologized in writing for the delay. By Thursday, the Guild extended my showcase run by another week. And on Friday morning, the letter arrived. Formal, heavy paper from Gregory Shaw. Moore Fine Leather was filing a civil complaint, alleging unfair competition and defamation. Rachel Kim called me before I finished reading. "This is weak," she said. "But it's loud." "What do we do?" I asked. "We respond," she replied. "And we counter." "On what grounds?" I asked. "Interference," she said. "Retaliation. Pattern." My chest tightened, but my mind stayed clear. That night, I sat alone in the shop after closing. The lights dim, the hum of the city muffled. I thought about all the years I'd swallowed comments, accepted less, shrunk to keep peace. Peace had never been free. It had always cost me. I opened my laptop and started organizing files. Emails, letters, dates, names, the cease and desist, the supplier delays, the landlord call, the inspection timing. A pattern. I didn't feel angry. I felt ready, because if they wanted to make this official, then so would I. And once the truth entered a courtroom, it wouldn't belong to the family anymore. It would belong to the record. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and walked into the night knowing one thing for certain. They thought this was a warning shot. They didn't realize they'd just given me standing. And Chapter 8 wouldn't be about defense. It would be about exposure. The complaint was filed on a Monday morning. Daniel didn't call. My parents didn't reach out. Everything arrived through attorneys now, wrapped in language meant to intimidate without saying much at all. Unfair competition, brand dilution, defamation by implication. I read the filing twice, then handed it to Rachel Kim across the small conference table in her office. "This is theater," she said calmly. "They're hoping you'll panic." "I won't," I replied. She nodded. "Good. Because if they'd wanted a quiet resolution, they wouldn't have filed this." Rachel flipped through the pages. "They're also sloppy." "How?" I asked. "They're claiming harm," she said, tapping the document. "But they're not identifying false statements. They're relying on the idea that your existence near their brand is the problem." "That's been the issue since childhood," I said. Rachel smiled faintly. "Courts don't care about childhood. They care about patterns." She slid a legal pad toward me. "Start from the beginning." So I did. Not emotionally, chronologically. The exclusion from the anniversary, the cease and desist, the supplier pause, the city inspection, the landlord call, Gregory Shaw's offer at the Guild, the timing of everything. Rachel wrote quickly. "This isn't just defense," she said when I finished. "This is leverage." "Against them?" I asked. "Against the narrative," she corrected. "And against their claim that you're acting independently of pressure." That afternoon, we filed an answer. Clear, direct, documented. And we filed a counterclaim. Tortious interference, retaliatory conduct, abuse of process. When Rachel sent the final version for my approval, my hands didn't shake. I signed. By Wednesday, the story shifted. Not publicly yet, but internally. Westline Tannery confirmed long-term supply terms in writing. Victor Ramirez reaffirmed my lease renewal. 2 other suppliers proactively emailed to clarify they had received no further suggestions. People were choosing sides, quietly. Thursday morning, Margaret Hale from the Guild called. "I wanted you to know," she said. "Our board has reviewed the situation." "And?" I asked. "That's enough," I said. "It is," she agreed. That afternoon, I ran into Marcus Allen again. He stopped by the shop to pick up a custom briefcase. "I read the article," he said. "And the follow-up." "There was a follow-up?" I asked. He nodded. "Trade newsletter. About legacy brands and emerging independence." I didn't respond. Marcus hesitated, then said, "People are talking. Not the way your family hoped." That night, my mother finally called. I let it ring. Then I answered. "Elena," Carolyn Moore said, her voice thin. "This has gone too far." "I didn't file first," I replied. "You're tearing us apart," she said. "No," I said calmly. I stopped holding you together. She was silent for a long moment. Your father is devastated, she said finally. I closed my eyes. He hasn't asked how I am once. That's not fair, she snapped. It's accurate, I replied. She lowered her voice. If you drop this, Daniel is willing to talk. About what? I asked. About boundaries, she said. About collaboration. I almost laughed. Collaboration requires consent, I said. You never asked for mine. She exhaled sharply. What do you want? The question felt late. I want the truth on record, I said. And I want you to stop trying to manage me. You're being vindictive, she accused. No, I said. I'm being exact. She hung up. Friday brought the first real consequence. A regional retailer canceled a more fine leather order, citing concerns about litigation risk. Another asked for reassurances about supplier stability. Daniel sent an email to all staff, emphasizing unity and values. He did not mention my name, but he didn't have to. That evening, Hannah Brooks called. I'm proud of you, she said. For what? I asked. For not backing down when it would have been easier, she replied. A lot of people mistake quiet strength for weakness. I used to, I admitted. She paused. There's something else. What? I asked. We're accelerating the expansion, she said. 2 additional markets, if you're willing. I looked around my shop. The walls I'd painted myself. The work tables scarred with use. I am, I said. On Saturday morning, I opened the shop early. A woman stood outside waiting. She introduced herself as Claire Donovan, owner of a small boutique in Seattle. I followed your work after the guild, she said. I'd like to carry it. We talked for an hour. As she left, she said something that stayed with me. You don't sound angry, she said. You sound certain. That was the difference. Sunday evening, a new article dropped. Not about me. About more fine leather. About a lawsuit raising questions about how legacy brands treat internal dissent and independent competition. No accusations, just questions. Daniel called that night. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Elena, you're hurting people who don't deserve this. I deleted it because I finally understood something he never would. This wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about refusing to be hurt quietly anymore. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing for the following month. Rachel called it a good sign. They want clarity, she said. I closed the shop that night feeling tired but steady. They had tried to silence me with process. Instead, they'd created a record. And records don't forget. The first person to blink wasn't Daniel. It was my father. On Tuesday morning, 3 days before the preliminary hearing, Thomas Moore walked into my shop. Not announced, not expected. I was at the back table cutting hide for a custom satchel when the bell over the door rang. I didn't look up at first. I heard the pause, the careful step. The weight of someone who expected the room to rearrange itself around him. Elena, he said. I set the knife down. Slowly, cleanly. He stood near the front display, hands clasped behind his back like he was inspecting a showroom he still owned. You didn't call ahead, I said. I didn't think you'd answer, he replied. That was fair. He looked older than I remembered. Not weaker, just worn in a way power never fixes. I won't take much of your time, he said. You already are, I replied evenly. He nodded once, absorbing the tone. He glanced around the shop, the shelves, the workbench, the framed certificate from the guild. You've done well, he said. I didn't thank him. I came to ask you to reconsider, he continued. This lawsuit is unnecessary. For whom? I asked. For all of us, he said. Families shouldn't be settled in courtrooms. I met his eyes. Families shouldn't need lawyers to tell them how to behave. He exhaled. Daniel feels attacked. Daniel attacked first, I said. Quietly, repeatedly. Thomas frowned. You're interpreting business decisions as personal. No, I said. I'm documenting patterns. He shifted his weight. What do you want? The same question, different mouth. I want you to acknowledge what happened, I said. Not to fix it, just to stop denying it. His jaw tightened. You were always sensitive. There it was. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Finality. Then this conversation is over, I said. Elena, he said sharply, you're risking everything. I stepped past him and opened the door. So are you. He hesitated. Then he left. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it for a moment. not to recover, just to breathe. That afternoon, Rachel called. "They've requested mediation," she said. "Before the hearing?" I asked. "Yes," she replied, "which means someone's nervous." "Daniel?" I asked. "Or someone above him," she said. We agreed to attend. The mediation room was neutral and aggressively polite. Beige walls, water pitchers, a framed print no one would ever remember. Daniel sat across from me. Daniel Moore, my older brother, CEO, golden child. He didn't look at me at first. Their attorney, Stephen Collins, opened with a practiced smile. "We believe this matter can be resolved amicably." Rachel didn't respond. I did. "Amicable requires honesty," I said. "So let's skip the adjectives." Daniel finally looked up. His eyes were sharp, controlled. "You've made your point," he said. "This has gone far enough." "I disagree," I replied. He leaned forward. "You're damaging the brand." "I am not the one who filed suit," I said. I responded. Stephen cleared his throat. "Perhaps we can discuss terms." Daniel slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer. A buyout. Not of my business. Of my silence. A non-disclosure agreement. A one-time payment. A vague clause about future collaboration. Rachel flipped through it once, then closed it. "No," she said. Daniel's mouth tightened. "She hasn't even read it." Rachel met his gaze. "I read enough." Daniel turned to me. "You could walk away comfortable." I looked at him. "I already am." "You don't need to prove anything," he said. "I'm not proving," I replied. "I'm correcting," he scoffed. "You always had a chip on your shoulder, and you always pretended not to notice," I said. The mediator tried to intervene. I stood. "This isn't going anywhere," I said. "You don't want resolution. You want control." Daniel stood too. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said. "I'm making a record." We left. That night, an email went out to more fine leather investors. An update on ongoing litigation. Carefully worded, carefully defensive. Rachel forwarded it to me with one line: "Their positioning." 2 days later, a former employee reached out. Linda Perez, procurement manager for More Fine Leather, until last year. She asked if we could talk. We met at a cafe halfway between our shops. "I'm not looking for trouble," she said immediately. "I'm listening," I replied. She stirred her coffee. "I was pressured to deprioritize certain vendors." "Which ones?" I asked. She named them. "The same ones who'd paused on me." "I was told it was strategic," she said, "but it felt personal." "Did you document it?" I asked. She nodded. "I keep everything." Rachel was thrilled. By the end of the week, 2 more names surfaced. Patterns became timelines. Timelines became leverage. On Sunday night, my mother emailed. No subject line, just text. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of this spectacle." I read it once, then archived it. Monday morning, Rachel called with an edge in her voice. "They've amended their complaint," she said. "Added claims." "Which means?" I asked. "Which means they're scared," she replied. "And overreaching." The hearing was moved up. The judge wanted clarity. So did the press. By Wednesday, I was no longer invisible. Requests came in. Interview inquiries. Panel invites. I declined most. I didn't need noise. I needed precision. On Thursday evening, I closed the shop early. I sat alone at the work table, running my hands over a finished briefcase. The leather was smooth, strong, scarred in places. Perfect. Daniel texted me that night. "This doesn't have to end badly." I stared at the message. Then I typed back. It already did. Just not for me. The hearing was the next morning. And this time, I wasn't walking in to defend myself. I was walking in to let the truth do what it always does. Take its time. And then, take everything. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and old paper. I arrived early, alone. Rachel Kim met me inside the security line, her suit crisp, her expression unreadable in the way good attorneys cultivate. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready for years," I said. The hearing room was smaller than people imagine. No drama, no theatrics. Just wood, flags, and a judge who had already read everything. Judge Evelyn Hart entered without ceremony. Mid-50s, sharp eyes. No patience for nonsense. "Good morning," she said, already flipping through a binder. "Let's proceed." Daniel sat 2 rows ahead of me, with Stephen Collins beside him. He hadn't turned around yet. When he finally did, his expression was composed, almost bored. I didn't look away. Stephen began. He spoke smoothly about brand protection, reputational harm, market confusion. He used phrases like independent bad actor, an implied endorsement. Judge Hart listened without interruption. Then Rachel stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize. She laid out dates, emails, supplier communications, the cease and desist letter, the timing of the city inspection, the landlord inquiry, the guild invitation, the lawsuit. She handed documents to the clerk, one by one. Judge Hart's pen stopped moving. "Ms. Moore," she said, looking at me for the first time, "did you ever claim affiliation with Moore Fine Leather?" "No," I replied. I avoided it deliberately. "Why?" the judge asked. "Because I knew what would happen if I didn't," I said. Daniel shifted. Rachel called Linda Perez. Linda testified calmly. No bitterness, just facts. Instructions she'd been given. Vendors she'd been told to deprioritize. Language used. "Did anyone mention Miss Elena Moore by name?" Rachel asked. "Yes," Linda said. "More than once," Stephen objected. Judge Hart overruled. Rachel called 2 more witnesses. One supplier, one former logistics coordinator. Each story aligned. No embellishment, no emotion, just consistency. When it was Daniel's turn, he took the stand willingly, confidently. He spoke about leadership, about difficult decisions, about protecting a family legacy. Judge Hart listened, then asked one question. "Mr. Moore," she said, "why did your company's actions intensify immediately after your sister declined a buyout offer?" Daniel paused, a fraction of a second too long. "That's coincidental," he said. Judge Hart didn't respond. She turned to Stephen. "Do you have evidence of false statements made by the defendant?" Stephen hesitated. "Not directly, Your Honor." "Then what exactly are we litigating?" Judge Hart asked. Silence. The judge closed her binder. "I'm issuing a preliminary ruling," she said. My heart didn't race. It slowed. The court finds insufficient basis for the plaintiff's claims of brand dilution and defamation. Further, the pattern of conduct presented raises serious concerns regarding retaliatory interference. Daniel went still. "I am dismissing the complaint," Judge Hart continued, "and allowing the defendant's counterclaim to proceed." She looked directly at Daniel. "I also strongly recommend the parties consider settlement. Continued litigation will not favor those who initiated pressure." Gavel. Once. That was it. Outside the courtroom, cameras waited. Rachel fielded questions. I didn't. Daniel brushed past me without speaking. Our eyes met briefly. He looked hollow, not angry, not defeated, exposed. By afternoon, the decision was everywhere it mattered. Trade publications, supplier inboxes, investor group chats. By evening, Daniel called. I didn't answer. He texted. "We need to talk," I replied. Through counsel. An hour later, Rachel forwarded an email. Revised settlement proposal. No NDA. Public acknowledgement of independent operations. Written apology. Withdrawal of all claims. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed my response. Not yet. That night, I walked through my shop after closing. The lights were low. The air smelled like leather and oil. This place had been built quietly, patiently. I ran my hand along the workbench, the scar where I dropped a blade my first year. I remembered my mother telling me it was a hobby, my father saying it wasn't scalable, Daniel saying it wasn't serious. All those judgments had cost them nothing. Until now. The next morning, an unexpected email arrived from Margaret Hale at the Guild. "We're organizing a symposium on independent manufacturing ethics. We would like you to keynote." I stared at the message. Then another came in, from Marcus Allen. "Investors are asking who advised More Fine Leather to go after you. That conversation isn't going well for them." By noon, Daniel's board had scheduled an emergency meeting. By evening, rumors of internal review surfaced. I didn't comment. I shipped orders. I answered customer emails. I worked. Because the most unsettling thing I could do now was continue exactly as I was. Daniel finally left a voicemail. "Elena," he said, his voice tired, "I underestimated you." I deleted it, not out of anger, out of accuracy. Underestimation requires ignorance. He had known exactly what he was doing. The difference was that now, so did everyone else. The case would continue. The truth was documented. And for the first time in my life, my family name no longer felt like a weight. It felt like a distance. And distance, I was learning, is a kind of freedom. Chapter 11 wouldn't be about court. It would be about consequences. The kind that arrive quietly and stay. Consequences don't announce themselves. They don't arrive with raised voices or slammed doors. They show up as calendar changes, quiet emails, meetings you're no longer invited to, decisions made without you. They show up as silence. 3 days after the hearing, Daniel resigned as CEO of More Fine Leather. The press release framed it as a strategic transition, health reasons, a desire to refocus on long-term vision. No mention of me, no mention of the lawsuit, but the timing said everything. The board appointed an interim CEO, Paul Whitaker, a man with no family ties and a reputation for cleaning house. Investors applauded the move. Suppliers followed. Within a week, More Fine Leather issued a public clarification. They acknowledged my brand as fully independent. They apologized for any confusion caused by prior communications. The word apology appeared exactly once. It was enough. My counterclaim didn't disappear. Rachel advised patience. Let it breathe, she said. Pressure works better when you don't keep touching it. I listened. At the shop, life shifted in smaller, more personal ways. Customers began asking about my story, not out of curiosity, but recognition. Women who had been sidelined, men who had been underestimated, people who knew what it felt like to be erased politely. I didn't perform resilience for them. I just worked. One afternoon, my father emailed. Subject line, "We need to talk." I didn't respond. 2 days later, my mother came by the shop. Carolyn Moore stood outside for a full minute before coming in. I watched through the glass as she adjusted her coat, smoothed her hair, rehearsed something she would never say correctly. The bell rang. "Elena," she said softly. I nodded once. "You can stay for 10 minutes. She flinched, but nodded. She walked slowly, touching nothing, like the space might reject her. "I didn't know how bad it was," she said finally. I didn't answer. She continued. "Your father and I thought Daniel was protecting the business, and I was expendable," I said. She swallowed. "We didn't mean it that way. Meaning is an impact," I replied. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. She had never been good at that. "Your grandmother would have wanted unity," she said. "My grandmother taught me to stitch my own seams," I said, "so they wouldn't come apart when someone pulled." She looked at me then. Really looked. "You've changed," she said. "Yes," I replied. I stopped waiting. The 10 minutes passed. She left without asking for forgiveness. I didn't offer it. At home that night, Rachel called. "They're ready to settle," she said. "On your terms." "Which are?" I asked. "Public acknowledgement of retaliatory conduct," she said. "A written apology from the company, financial compensation for lost revenue, and a clause preventing any future interference." "And Daniel?" I asked. Rachel paused. "He's no longer authorized to speak for them." That answered more than she intended. We finalized the agreement a week later. No press conference. No victory lap. Just documents signed and filed. The check cleared 2 days after that. I didn't celebrate. I paid my staff bonuses. I upgraded equipment. I set aside a fund for apprenticeships, because revenge, I'd learned, is temporary. Infrastructure lasts. The symposium at the Guild happened in early spring. I stood on stage under warm lights, looking out at a room filled with people who didn't need convincing. I talked about craft, about autonomy, about what happens when family and business collide. I didn't name names. Afterward, Margaret Hale hugged me. "You didn't burn bridges," she said. "You built alternatives." That night, Daniel emailed me from a private account. No subject, just text. "I never thought you'd go this far." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, "Neither did you." That was the last time we spoke. Months passed. The shop expanded. Seattle, Denver, a small showroom in Austin. My name appeared in places I'd never imagined. I stayed off panels about family conflict. I didn't want to be a cautionary tale. I wanted to be an example of something quieter. One evening, as I locked up, Hannah Brooks asked me a question. "Do you miss them?" she said. I considered it. "I miss the version of myself who thought earning love was possible," I said. "I don't miss the cost." She nodded. "That's honest." It was, because healing didn't arrive with closure.
It arrived with boundaries, with work done well, with nights that ended peacefully. It would be about what comes after, when the noise fades, and you finally hear your own life again. The quiet came slowly, not all at once, not as relief, more like a steady clearing, the way fog lifts without asking for permission. By the time summer arrived, the case was closed. Not dismissed, not forgotten, closed, with signatures, filings, and consequences that would sit on record longer than anyone's memory of the headlines. I stopped checking my inbox for reactions. I stopped bracing myself when unknown numbers appeared on my phone. I started waking up without rehearsing conversations that would never happen. That was how I knew it was over. The shop didn't feel like a battleground anymore. It felt like a place again. Every morning, I unlocked the door at 9, sometimes earlier if I couldn't sleep. The smell of leather and conditioner grounded me. The rhythm of work returned to what it had always been before everything went sideways. Cut, stitch, burnish, finish. There was dignity in repetition. One afternoon, a young woman came in carrying a damaged leather tote. She introduced herself as Maya Lewis, voice unsure, hands tight around the strap. "I heard you might be hiring," she said. "Tell me what you can do," I replied. She didn't oversell. She didn't apologize. She showed me her hands instead, the calluses, the scars. "I learned fast," she said. "So did I. Once." She started the following week. The first time she asked a question and waited instead of flinching, I realized something had shifted. Not just for me, for what I was building. I wasn't recreating the hierarchy I escaped. I was doing something else. In late July, my father sent a letter. Not an email. Actual paper. I didn't open it for 2 days. When I finally did, it was short. No excuses, no explanations. Just an acknowledgement that he had failed to protect me when it mattered. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask to see me. It was the first honest thing he'd ever given me. I placed the letter in a drawer. Not as a trophy, not as evidence. As closure, I didn't need to revisit. Daniel stayed quiet. Occasionally, someone would mention him in passing. A consulting role. A board advisory position somewhere smaller, less visible. I didn't ask questions. His life was no longer my responsibility. In September, the Guild Symposium recording went live. I watched it once, alone, late at night. I didn't recognize the woman on stage at first. She spoke calmly, precisely, without defensiveness. She didn't sound angry. She sounded finished. That mattered more than any apology ever could. The expansion continued carefully. No rush, no spectacle. Seattle stabilized. Denver grew steadily. Austin surprised me. I turned down a licensing deal that felt wrong, accepted another that didn't. I learned to trust my discomfort. One evening, after closing, Hannah asked if I ever regretted not reconciling. I wiped down the counter, thinking, regret assumes there was a version of that relationship that would have met me halfway, I said. There wasn't. She nodded. That's clarity. It was. On the anniversary of the hearing, Rachel took me out for coffee. You know, she said, smiling, you changed how a few people approach cases like this. How so? I asked. People don't assume the quiet party will fold anymore, she said. They document. I smiled at that. Because documentation had saved me. Not revenge. Not rage. Records. Boundaries. The willingness to stop explaining myself. That night, I locked up the shop and stood for a moment on the sidewalk. The city hummed around me. Ordinary, unconcerned. I didn't feel powerful. I felt present, which was better. If you're listening to this and wondering when it turns around, I won't tell you it happens fast. It doesn't. It happens the moment you stop negotiating your worth with people who benefit from your silence. It happens when you choose yourself without asking permission. If this story felt familiar, if you've ever been sidelined, underestimated, or quietly pushed out by people who should have protected you, take that as your sign. You're not behind. You're just early in a story that hasn't finished yet. And if you want to hear more stories like this, ones about boundaries, dignity, and what happens when the tables turn without shouting, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. I read them. Because this chapter is over. But the work goes on. And this time, I'm writing it
on my own terms.